The Hello Kitty murder case is one of the most shocking murder cases in history in Hong Kong. The brutal murder took place in Hong Kong in the spring of 1999. A young woman who was working as a hostess was abducted in Lai Yau Estate and tortured brutally in an apartment in Tsim Sha Tsui. The young woman, Fan Man Yi, was tortured after stealing a wallet which was owned by a frequent customer of hers. Fan Man Yi, who was 23 years old, was held captive by 3 men and 1 girl before she lost her life on April the 15th, 1999. Fan Man Yi's body was decapitated and her skull placed inside of a Hello Kitty doll, which is the reason the case was given the name the Hello Kitty murder case. Fan Man Yi was born in 1975 and was abandoned by her family as a child, which resulted in her being raised in an all-girls orphanage. Fan was told to leave the orphanage at the age of 15 because of there being an age restriction. This had thrown Fan into a life of street prostitution and developing an addiction to drugs, as she was homeless until she reached the age of 21. Fan began to work as a prostitute and eventually married one of her clients, who was also a drug addict. The wedding was in 1996, and 2 years later she gave birth to her son. This was not long before her murder. Neighbours of Fan would often report being woken up by screeching and crying from the couple fighting and the child's screaming coming from their apartment. It was Fan's pregnancy and son being born that had made her decide to turn her life around, to give him a better and safer life. Soon after his birth, she quit drugs and stopped working as a prostitute. Fan landed a job as a hostess at a brothel and eventually left her abusive, violent husband. This was all just before her murder, and because of deciding to leave her husband, even though she felt safer, she had a much lower income to support her and her son. On March 17, 1999, Fan was abducted by 3 men and 1 girl. Chan, his grooming victim, Ah Fong, Yang Wai Lan and Yang Weliang and Long Xing Cold, the 3 men and girl, took Fan to an apartment at number 31 Granville Road in Tsim Sha Tsui, where they began their torture by holding her captive there for a month. Chan had first planned on making money off Fan by being her pimp. During Fan's imprisonment, she was repeatedly tortured and raped. One source reported Fan to have been beaten with metal bars. Fan was also reported to have been strung up and used as a punching bag by her captors. Their torture was so brutal that on one occasion Fan was kicked in her head around 50 times. Her captors used extreme methods of torture. Her legs and feet were burned with candle wax, so she could not walk. Fan was also forced to smile and tell her captors she enjoyed the beatings, and if she refused, they subjected her to even harsher torture. This treatment of extreme, horrific torture led Fan to be traumatized and eventually led to her death. Fan died from her horrific wounds on April 15th, 1999. Stories differ as to whether she died while her captors were out or if she had died overnight. When her captors returned Fan's body, they dismembered and boiled her remains. Fan's skull was sewed inside of a Hello Kitty doll, while the rest of her body was discarded. Ah Fong led police to the scene on May 24th, where the only remains of Fan that were found were her skull, one tooth, and some internal organs inside a plastic bag. The Hello Kitty murder trial lasted over 6 weeks, in which the 3 men were convicted of manslaughter. This ruling was due to the remains being not sufficient to show whether Fan was murdered or died from a drug overdose. The jury could not rule that the men intended to kill Fan. What they did determine was that she had died as a direct result of their torture. Ah Fong testified at the trial in exchange for immunity. Judge Peter Nigjan was the judge that handed out the sentences. Peter was born on the 1st of October, 1943, and died on the 16th of June, 2020. He was a judge and Queen's Counsel from Hong Kong. Peter was born in Vietnam and moved to Hong Kong in 1948. Peter served as the Crown Prosecutor of Hong Kong between 1994 and 1997, and was the first Director of Public Prosecution of Asian descent in the territory. Peter went on to serve as a judge in the Court of First Instance of the Territory's High Court in 1997 until he retired in 2008. The Hello Kitty case was one of his most high-profile cases. He was succeeded by Grenfell Cross as the Crown Prosecutor. He later served as a member of Torture Claims Appeal Board. Peter sentenced the Hello Kitty murder perps to life in prison, with the possibility of parole. Peter stated in court that never in Hong Kong in recent years has a court heard such cruelty, depravity, callousness, brutality, violence, and viciousness. Psychiatry reports had described the 3 men as remorseless. There would be no review for parole for 20 years, which was 2020. The apartment building in which the brutal crime took place was demolished in September 2012 and has been rebuilt as a hotel in 2016. The publicity surrounding the case has resulted in the release of movies that told the story. Both There Is a Secret in My Soup and Human Pork Chop were released in 2001. Liang Xing Chao was arrested and sentenced to jail once again for 12 months in August 2022 for assaulting a 10-year-old girl. Ah Fong, the 14-year-old who was groomed by the 3 men involved in the torture, later revealed the reason she testified against the 3 men. At first, when a 14-year-old Ah Fong told police she was being haunted by the ghost of a woman, they didn't believe her. But when they found out who the woman was, they were completely horrified. What grabbed their attention was when Ah Fong explained that she was haunted by a ghost of a woman that she had something to do with her murder. Following Ah Fong back to the flat in the city's slum Kowloon district, the police discovered that the girl's dreams were actually fact. The police had found the oversized Hello Kitty doll with the decapitated skull of a woman inside it. Many people thought the story was so shocking that it could not possibly be true, but the evidence uncovered by police proved that the nightmare was all too real, as the flat in which Man Yi was tortured in was full of Hello Kitty merchandise, from sheets to curtains to silverware, etc. Thanks for tuning in to Assassination. This is Morris Coveney Jr., and I will see you next time on Assassination for more true crime stories.